A shocking leaked footage reveals Taehyung insulting Jungkook's mother. Jungkook's response will change everything between them forever. "I don't care if she gave birth to him. She's nothing but a manipulative woman." The words sliced through the room like broken glass hurled into silence. The cameras were rolling. The audio still lived. No one spoke, not the manager, not the stylists, not even the assistant director behind the tinted monitor screen. Jungkook sat on the leather couch, frozen, every muscle in his jaw tight, his hands clenched into white-knuckled fists on his knees. He had heard it, every word, clear, sharp, as if Taehyung had whispered them right into his ear. But Taehyung hadn't whispered. He had shouted behind a partition wall, to a staff member clearly forgetting that the mic on his collar was still live. The studio lights felt like they'd multiplied in heat, searing through Jungkook's skin. His pulse thudded in his ears. The hum of fluorescent lights was now deafening. No one dared to breathe. Taehyung emerged from behind the partition with the easy swagger of someone who had just vented. But his eyes locked with Jungkook's, and something shifted. His confident step slowed, the smile on his lips faltered. And then, Jungkook stood. Everyone tensed. Taehyung blinked. "What?" "You said something about my mother," Jungkook said, voice low, shaking. Taehyung looked around, eyes darting at the sea of frozen staff. "It was just a comment. Not even serious." "Say it again," Jungkook interrupted, walking forward now, slow but deliberate, louder. "So everyone here can hear what kind of man you really are." Taehyung's shoulders rose slightly, defensive. "You're overreacting. You always do when it's about her." Jungkook stopped just a few feet from him. "You don't get to say a damn word about my mother. You don't know what she's done for me. What she suffered, what we suffered while you were in your warm home playing pretend in front of the press." The words hit Taehyung like stone. For a moment, the cocky facade cracked. Everyone in the room stood still, afraid to interrupt, yet unable to turn away. Even the main director watching from the monitors had his headset off, mouth parted in disbelief. The silence was heavy. But behind that silence, the damage was already rippling outward. Earlier that morning, the tension had already been palpable. A miscommunication over schedule, a cold exchange during makeup, a clipped tone in rehearsals. But no one had expected this. No one had thought the cracks in Taehyung and Jungkook's relationship could rupture so violently and so publicly. Now, standing inches apart, both of them were breathing hard. But it was Jungkook who spoke again, quieter this time, but more dangerous. "You've crossed every line, Taehyung. You don't come back from this." Taehyung's voice was smaller now, almost unsure. "I didn't mean—" "Stop," Jungkook cut in. His hand trembled as he pointed to the wall of mirrors behind them. "You think the world's just watching us smile and perform? Like dolls? But this is the real us, the mess behind the glass." And then, before anyone could stop him, Jungkook turned toward the exit. His steps echoed in the hallway as the automatic door hissed open, then shut with a finality that made everyone in the room wince. It was only then that Taehyung realized the mic had been live the entire time. The audio had already been fed into the backup system. It was being backed up on cloud storage. And worst of all, it had already started circulating among internal staff. Within hours, a clip would leak. The phrase, "she's nothing but a manipulative woman," would be everywhere. And armies wouldn't stay quiet. Taehyung sat down slowly, like someone realizing too late they were sitting on glass shards. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring down at the floor as if the answers were hidden in the concrete. No one approached him. No one dared. Outside the studio, Jungkook paced the alley behind the building, his hands in his hair, breath coming in bursts. His chest ached, not from anger, but betrayal. The kind of betrayal that didn't come from strangers, but from those you once trusted the most. His mother had been sick last year. Not many people knew, only the closest members. Taehyung had been there, held his shoulder, bought her flowers. And now this. He pulled out his phone, hovered over a contact, and then changed his mind. Instead, he opened his notes app and started typing something. His hands trembled. "You spoke about the only person in this world who never left me, so I'm leaving you." He hit save, then stared at the words, his vision blurred with unshed tears. The wind was cold, but not colder than what he felt inside. The cold night had deepened, blanketing the Seoul skyline with a dim, heavy silence. Jungkook sat in the back of a black van, parked outside his apartment building, but he made no move to get out. His fingers hovered over the glowing screen of his phone, where the message he had typed earlier still waited unsent in the Notes app. The words stared back at him with brutal honesty. You spoke about the only person in this world who never left me, so I'm leaving you. But Jungkook wasn't sure if he was ready to send it, not yet. His heart felt cracked down the center, fury on one side, pain on the other. Inside the van, the air was stifling despite the AC humming softly. The manager sat tensely in the front seat, stealing glances at the rearview mirror every few minutes. Unsure whether to say something or stay silent, the driver was completely still, hands folded on the steering wheel, waiting for a signal that never came. Suddenly, Jungkook's phone buzzed. It was Jimin. The name alone made Jungkook's chest tighten. He knew Jimin must have heard. Of course he had. The news was spreading like wildfire. He didn't answer the call. A second later, a message came in. I don't know what happened yet, but Taehyung is panicking. Please tell me you're okay. Jungkook read the message, then turned the phone face down on the seat beside him. He leaned his head back and closed his eyes. The image replayed over and over in his mind, Taehyung's mouth, his voice sharp and venomous, spitting out that sentence like it was nothing. She's nothing but a manipulative woman. It wasn't just the words. It was the casualness, the way Taehyung tossed them out like trash, behind a wall, not caring if they landed on someone's soul. Jungkook had defended Taehyung countless times over the years, silenced rumors, smoothed over misunderstandings, protected him even when he didn't deserve it. But this was something else entirely. Jungkook's hand curled into a fist as memories flooded in. Nights spent at Taehyung's house when schedules got too heavy. Taehyung calling his mother Ioma playfully when she visited with snacks during rehearsals. The soft laughter they shared during late-night studio sessions. All of it felt like lies now. He opened his eyes. Take me back, Jungkook said. The manager turned. What? Back to the studio. But Jungkook, there are reporters already. I don't care. The driver looked to the manager, who hesitated for only a second before nodding. The van turned around. Meanwhile, at the high building, Taehyung sat slumped in a private conference room. He wasn't alone. Jimin stood with his arms crossed by the window, glaring at him like he couldn't believe the man he was looking at. You really said that? Jimin's voice trembled with rage. You actually said that about Jungkook's mom? On a hot mic? Taehyung didn't lift his eyes. It wasn't meant to be broadcast. That's your excuse? That you didn't mean for people to hear it? Taehyung looked up, jaw tight. You weren't there, Jimin. You didn't hear what she said to me last year. She tried to control everything. She cornered me during rehearsals, told me to stay away from him, said I was damaging his image. Jimin's mouth opened in shock, then closed again, processing. Taehyung continued, voice rising. She made me feel like I was nothing, like I was corrupting her golden boy. I kept quiet for months. I never said anything. And then tonight, it just spilled. So you humiliated Jungkook publicly because you couldn't handle a private conversation with his mother a year ago? Jimin's voice was ice. Taehyung leaned back, exhaustion in his face. You think I'm proud of it? I was angry. I snapped. I didn't know the mic was still... You didn't care, Taehyung. That's the problem. Just then, the door opened. The silence that followed was brutal. Jungkook stood in the doorway, eyes dark, expression unreadable. Jimin backed away instinctively, giving them space. Taehyung stood slowly. Jungkook, he began, but Jungkook raised a hand. Don't say my name. Taehyung blinked. You're not going to explain your way out of this, Jungkook said, voice low but sharp enough to cut. You want to talk? Let's talk. The room held its breath. Go ahead, Jungkook said. Tell me to my face what you think about my mother. Taehyung shook his head. I don't want to fight you. No, Jungkook said, stepping forward. You wanted to humiliate me without getting caught. Well, you were caught. So now, own it. Taehyung's lips trembled. I was angry. Angry at what? Jungkook hissed. That she protected me from you? That she saw through your fake loyalty? You acted like a brother, Taehyung. You acted like family. I was family, Taehyung snapped, voice cracking. Until she decided I wasn't good enough. There it was. The raw truth. Jimin flinched at the sudden emotion in Taehyung's voice. Jungkook stared at him like he didn't recognize the man in front of him. "My mother didn't exile you, Taehyung," Jungkook said, tone softening but only slightly. "You exiled yourself the day you let your pride come before your love." Silence again, but not the kind that could heal. Taehyung closed his eyes for a moment, then said, "I'm sorry." Jungkook looked at him long and hard, then laughed just once, bitterly. "You're not sorry. You're cornered." Taehyung's face twisted. "I don't want your apology," Jungkook continued. "I want you to make it right, publicly, the same way you humiliated her." Taehyung looked panicked now. "If I say something public, the narrative will explode. They'll think it's all falling apart." "Then let it fall apart," Jungkook said, deadly calm. "If you don't apologize to my mother, I will burn this entire illusion down. I'll go on live. I'll tell them everything. The silence, the manipulation, the rot beneath the glamour. I don't care about the brand anymore. I care about respect." Jimin stepped between them gently, hand raised. "Okay, enough. You're both hurt. But Jungkook, if you do that, it's not just Taehyung who'll suffer. You will too." "I already am," Jungkook whispered. And with that, he turned and left again, this time not storming out, but walking slowly, as if every step weighed more than the last. That night, Taehyung sat alone in the conference room until the lights turned off automatically. The next morning, he went live. His face was pale, his hair unstyled, no makeup, no background music. "I need to say something," he began, and the world watched. Because everyone knew, after this, nothing would be the same. The live broadcast counter ticked past 3 million viewers within the first 90 seconds. No intro, no warning, no polished studio setup. Just Taehyung, sitting on a plain chair in a dimly lit room, his face bare, eyes swollen from a night of no sleep, and a tremble in his fingers that he tried to hide beneath the frame of the camera. The chat was exploding with emojis, hearts, and confused comments. Taehyung, "Oppa? Why does he look like he's about to cry? Where's Jungkook? Is this about what happened yesterday?" Taehyung swallowed hard, looking into the lens like he was about to confess to a crime. Maybe in a way, he was. He took a breath. "I know what everyone saw, and I know what you all heard." His voice cracked on the second word. He cleared his throat, eyes darting away for a moment before coming back. "The words I said about Jungkook's mother. There is no excuse. There's no justification. What I said was cruel, careless, and ugly. It doesn't matter that I was angry. It doesn't matter that I didn't think anyone would hear it. The truth is, I meant what I said in that moment, and that's what hurts the most." The screen was filled with hearts and cries of confusion. Some fans typed messages defending him, begging him not to cry. Others demanded accountability. But Taehyung ignored the chat entirely. "I let something dark inside me fester for too long. I felt abandoned. I felt judged. And instead of talking about it like an adult, I buried it until it turned into poison. Then I spit that poison onto someone who never deserved it. Onto a woman who showed me kindness. Onto someone who called me son before I ever deserved it." His voice shook again. He clenched his jaw to stay composed. "Jungkook," he whispered, "I know you're watching." Backstage in a dressing room far away, Jungkook sat with his phone propped against the wall. He hadn't planned to watch, but of course he had. Jimin sat beside him, watching too, saying nothing, eyes flicking to Jungkook every time Taehyung paused. Taehyung continued, his shoulders trembling now. "I said those words because I was drowning in jealousy, not of your success, not of your fame, but of your peace. You always had this light in you. Even when things were hard, even when everyone turned their backs on you, your mother held you up, and I..." His lips quivered. "I envied that. I hated that. Because no matter how hard I tried, I never felt like I was enough for my own parents. And seeing her love you unconditionally made me realize how empty I felt inside." He wiped at his eyes, but his hand barely touched his cheek before another tear slipped down. "That doesn't excuse what I did. Nothing does. But I needed to say it. I needed you to know that I know. I know I betrayed you. I know I destroyed the last bit of trust we had. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness." Taehyung leaned forward, closer to the camera, like he was trying to reach through it. "But I'm begging for it anyway, not for me, for her. For the woman I insulted, for the person who gave you strength to become who you are. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I will spend the rest of my life trying to be someone she wouldn't be ashamed of." Jimin glanced sideways at Jungkook, waiting. But Jungkook didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just stood up and left the room. Cameras followed him as soon as he stepped outside. He was expected at a fan meeting that day. But no one could have predicted he'd show up early and alone. Flashes blinded him as he walked through the crowd of reporters and armies, ignoring questions shouted at him. He kept his hoodie up, hands in his pockets, head down. But his steps were determined. Inside the venue, he was ushered into a private room. Staff tried to act normal, but everyone was watching his every move, waiting to see if he'd react to the live broadcast still playing on several phones nearby. He didn't ask for it to be turned off. He didn't look away either. Instead, he sat down and stared at his reflection in the mirror. His face looked different. Older. Hardened. Jimin entered a few minutes later, gently placing a cup of warm tea on the table beside him. "You saw the whole thing?" Jimin asked. Jungkook nodded. "Do you believe him?" Jimin asked softly. There was a long silence. And then Jungkook finally spoke. "I believe he regrets getting caught." Jimin closed his eyes for a moment, disappointed. Jungkook stood again, adjusting his black denim jacket. "I don't think he regrets what he said. He regrets that he can't take it back." "Maybe," Jimin said, his voice cautious. "But he also admitted things I never thought he'd say out loud." Jungkook turned to face him. "And now the world will paint him as a victim of his own pain. They'll say he was brave to cry on camera. They'll forget what he said. But my mother won't." Jimin's heart clenched. "She watched it, you know," Jungkook whispered. "She watched the clip where he called her manipulative, and she didn't say a word. She just sat there, quiet." His voice cracked at the end. Jimin stepped forward. "I know she loves you, Kook. She doesn't want you to carry this anger forever." "I'm not angry," Jungkook said, his voice dangerously calm. "I'm done." He stepped past Jimin, out of the room, down the hallway. But this time, he didn't leave the building. He walked straight into the main stage. The fan meet hadn't started yet, but hundreds of armies had already gathered outside the main doors. Word spread fast that Jungkook had arrived. He asked the staff to unlock the doors. He walked out onto the stage. The crowd screamed. He raised a hand and they fell silent. No microphone, just his voice. "I know you've all seen what happened." The fans watched, stunned. "There's a lot I want to say. But more than anything, I want to say this. The woman who raised me, who fought for me, she is not a villain. She's not manipulative. She's not perfect, but she's real. And she's mine. And if you ever claim to love me, then you respect her." The room erupted in applause. Some fans cried. Others held hands over their mouths in disbelief. Jungkook stood still, his chest heaving. This isn't about who said what behind a mic. This is about what we tolerate, what we excuse in the name of fame or friendship or forgiveness. He paused. "I may stand on stage with someone again one day, but if I do, you'll know I chose to, and not because I was told to pretend everything's fine." Then he bowed. A deep, deliberate, respectful bow. The kind that meant, I meant every word. Behind the curtain, Jimin wiped his eyes. Behind a locked door, Taehyung sat with his face in his hands, unable to breathe. And in a quiet apartment on the edge of Seoul, Jungkook's mother watched the live stream with tears rolling silently down her cheeks. Tears not from sadness, but from pride. Jungkook hadn't forgiven, but he had chosen dignity. And that meant everything. The echoes of Jungkook's voice still clung to the air long after he left the stage. Fans remained silent, stunned, even as the staff slowly began ushering them out. Some clutched their light sticks, like lifelines. Some cried openly. Others whispered frantically, trying to understand what had just happened. The moment had not been rehearsed. No music cued his appearance. No schedule mentioned a speech. But what Jungkook said, raw, unfiltered, direct, was more powerful than any choreography. Backstage, chaos simmered beneath a thin veil of professionalism. Phones buzzed nonstop. HYBE's PR team scrambled through group chats and media feeds. Executives made hasty calls, some shouting, some pleading. Jimin was cornered by a junior manager asking, "Did you know he was going to do that? Please tell me that was planned." Jimin didn't answer. Because no, it wasn't planned. Not a single word of it. Jungkook had torn down the fourth wall between idol and audience. He had spoken not as a performer, but as a son. And in doing so, he had shifted the fault lines of the industry. At that moment, Jungkook was sitting alone in a small dressing room with no lights on. The only glow came from the city through the frosted window, painting his silhouette in moon-blue shadows. He sat with his knees pulled to his chest, forehead resting against them, breathing slow but shallow. He didn't regret it. Not even a little. But the aftershocks were starting. His phone buzzed again. Another call from Bang Se-hyuk. Ignored. Another message from Taehyung. Deleted without reading. Jimin had texted twice. No pressure, just checking in. Jungkook appreciated that. But he couldn't talk. Not yet. His lungs felt full of smoke, like the words he said earlier had burned something real inside him. And now, all that was left was ash. Across the city, Taehyung was pacing his apartment, barefoot, shirt wrinkled, eyes red. The live video he had posted earlier had done nothing to slow the backlash. Articles were already dissecting his words. Fans posted split-screen edits his insult and his apology side by side. Too late, some wrote. Damage done, others added. He tried to write a new post, something longer. But every time he stared at the blinking cursor, his chest tightened. The words wouldn't come. Nothing felt real. Nothing felt enough. His phone rang again. This time, he answered. Taehyung, it's Minji from PR. We need to meet. Now. I'm not going to lie in a statement, he said flatly. We're not asking you to lie, she snapped, then softened. We're asking you to contain the bleeding. I already said what I had to say. Not to the board, not to Bang, not to the fans, not properly, and definitely not to Jungkook's mom. Taehyung's face contorted. I can't. Then you better prepare to lose everything. The line went dead. He stared at the screen for a long moment before hurling the phone across the room. It hit the wall, bounced off, landed face up on the floor, cracked, still glowing. Meanwhile, in a high-rise apartment near Gangnam, Jungkook's mother sat quietly on the edge of her bed. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't answered the dozens of calls that came in. She had heard the insult. She had seen the apology. And most painfully, she had seen her son standing in front of thousands, defending her with tears she knew he'd never cry in front of her. She closed her eyes and exhaled. Her hand reached for her phone. She hesitated. Then, slowly, she typed, to Jeon Jungkook, I'm okay, my son. I know you are hurting. But please remember, anger burns everything, even the things we want to protect. She didn't hit send. She stared at the message, trembling, then deleted it. Let him feel what he needed to feel. She had raised him to be strong, but never silent. That was her mistake with others, not with him. The next morning, a press conference was announced. The label called it a reconciliation update. The fans called it a circus. Jungkook didn't want to attend, but his legal team advised it. It's not about forgiveness, they said. It's about control. Jungkook didn't care about control, but he cared about the truth. And more than that, he wanted to say something Taehyung couldn't prepare for. The room was massive white walls, rows of cameras, a stage with 2 chairs, one for Taehyung, one for Jungkook. A moderator sat between them. Both men entered from opposite doors. The tension could be sliced with a single breath. Taehyung sat stiffly, dressed in black, eyes sunken but alert. Jungkook was calm. Too calm. Like the eye of a storm. The moderator gave a brief opening, then said, We understand this situation has deeply impacted both of you, the company, and the fans. We'd like to offer this space to begin a public dialogue with honesty. Jungkook leaned forward first. If this is meant to be a performance, I won't participate. Murmurs echoed. Taehyung cleared his throat. I agree. Let's not pretend. Then silence. The moderator tried to steer things. Taehyung, perhaps you'd like to elaborate on your intentions. I didn't intend to humiliate his mother, Taehyung said, but I did. And I know now that some things, once said, don't just disappear. Jungkook looked at him. Then why try to erase them with tears? I wasn't trying to erase anything, Taehyung replied quickly. I was trying to own it. You don't get to choose the price after you break something, Taehyung. More silence. Do you want to fix this? Taehyung asked quietly. Jungkook tilted his head. Fix what? Our friendship. Jungkook's laugh was quiet, bitter. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed the version of you I believed in. Taehyung didn't look away. And you think you've never hurt anyone? I've never insulted someone's mother on a hot mic. The air froze. Jungkook leaned closer. You want me to forgive you? Fine. I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean I forget. And it sure as hell doesn't mean I stand next to you smiling like nothing ever happened. The moderator intervened. Perhaps we should... I'm not done, Jungkook said. He turned fully toward the cameras now. I want every fan watching to hear this. We're not perfect. We never were. But don't you dare let this industry convince you that silence equals maturity. Sometimes calling out the wound is the only way it heals. Taehyung blinked hard. Jungkook stood. I'll finish this tour. I'll fulfill my obligations. But after that, I'm taking a break. Not because I'm weak, but because I need to find the parts of me that weren't built by cameras, choreography, or contracts. And with that, he left. No bow. No apology. Just truth. The headlines exploded within seconds. Jungkook breaks contract with HYBE. BTS rift grows deeper. Fans support Jungkook after explosive press conference. In the days that followed, Taehyung tried to reach out again. He sent voice notes, long messages. None were read. Jungkook had disappeared from social media, from the public, from everything. But he wasn't lost. He had gone back to the only place he could breathe. Home. His mother greeted him without words, just an embrace that lasted longer than anything he'd felt in months. He stayed in his childhood room. He walked along the riverbank they used to visit when he was 12. He wrote music at night, not for charts, not for fame, but for clarity. And one evening, as the sky turned purple and the city lights blinked in the distance, he picked up his phone. One draft message sat unsent. To Kim Taehyung. You broke it. I grieved it. I've moved on. I hope someday you do too. He didn't hit send. But this time, he didn't delete it. He just let it sit. Like a scar, not a wound. Rain pounded the rooftop like war drums. The city had gone gray, swallowed by fog and thunder. Jungkook sat at his mother's kitchen table in a hoodie and sweatpants, the faint smell of boiled barley and seaweed soup still hanging in the air. The radio in the corner played an old trot song, too soft to distract but loud enough to fill the silence. His mother had gone to bed hours ago, yet he hadn't moved from that seat. His fingers were tapping the edge of the wooden table, rhythmically. Not a song, just nerves. In front of him, an untouched cup of tea had gone cold. His phone sat screen up. 5 missed calls from Bang Seok, 2 from Yoongi, several messages from Jimin, and 1 message, unread, from Kim Taehyung. No preview, no subject, just his name. As if that alone could carry the weight of 1,000 broken syllables. He stared at it. Not with anger, but with exhaustion. He had promised himself he wouldn't get pulled back into this. But silence wasn't healing anymore. It had become a different kind of pain. He stood and paced the small kitchen floor. The sound of his own footsteps was the only thing keeping him grounded. That and the voice inside his head that kept asking the same question. Is it cowardice to walk away or courage not to return? His phone buzzed again. He almost didn't look. But something made him glance down. It was an alert. A new article. Taehyung reveals new details about fight with Jungkook in raw, unfiltered interview. Jungkook's heart kicked. He opened the article. The first photo hit him like ice. Taehyung sat on a leather couch in what looked like a private home, a soft gray sweater clinging to his frame, eyes swollen but fierce. Beneath the photo was a quote in bold. What broke us wasn't what I said, it was what we never said for years before that. Jungkook's lips parted. He kept reading. Taehyung had granted an exclusive sit-down with one of the biggest entertainment reporters in South Korea. No press release. No script. Just an hour-long conversation where, as the interviewer said, he didn't blink when he bled. The article continued. I was jealous of Jungkook. Not for the fame. Not for the fans, but for the way he was allowed to love freely, protect what mattered to him without apology. I wasn't raised to know how to do that. Jungkook exhaled, slowly. There were years where I felt like I was his shadow, always next to him, never truly beside him. I let that bitterness grow. And the worst part? I still loved him like a brother through it all. The next line froze Jungkook. I wasn't angry at his mother. I was angry at myself for needing her approval and never getting it. He backed away from the table, heart pounding now, breath shallow. He hated that it affected him, hated that even now, Taehyung knew exactly where to strike, not with cruelty, but with truth. His phone rang. This time, he answered. Jimin, you read it? Jimin said softly. No need for hello. I read it. He's not hiding anymore. That doesn't mean he's right. No, Jimin agreed. But maybe it means he's finally real. There was a long silence. Then Jungkook asked, Have you spoken to him? He called me after the interview aired. He sounded like a man who'd just confessed to a crime and was waiting for the sentence. He already got his sentence. Jungkook muttered. I left. No, you ran. That made Jungkook pause. Jimin's voice softened. I'm not saying he deserves you back. I'm saying maybe you deserve to say what's still choking you. That night, Jungkook didn't sleep. He didn't cry. He just wrote. Not lyrics. Not posts. But a letter. Pages long. Words that had never seen daylight. Things he had swallowed during tours, awards, behind every stage, smile. He wrote about Taehyung's laughter that used to ground him, the late-night ramen runs, the time they fought over lyrics, only to make up with silence and one shared look. He wrote about betrayal, not just of his mother, but of him, how it felt to be reduced to an image, a product, how Taehyung's words made him feel like everything they had built had been fake. When he finished, he folded it neatly and set it on fire. He watched every line curl and die in the metal sink. He wasn't writing it for Taehyung. He was writing it for himself. The next day, an event shook the fandom to its core. Jungkook posted a video. Black background, white light. Just him, sitting cross-legged in a simple gray shirt. His eyes calm, his hair pushed back. He didn't smile. Hello, I'm Jungkook. He inhaled. Over the past few weeks, a lot has been said. Some of it true, some of it painful, all of it loud. He looked down, then up again. I left because I didn't know who I was under the noise. And I realized I can't heal in the same place I was wounded. But I also can't pretend that silence is peace, because it's not. It's just another kind of mask. He looked directly into the camera. To those who stood by me, thank you. To those who judged without knowing, I hope you never feel what I felt. And to the one who broke something sacred between us. He paused. I see you now. Not the version the industry made, not the idol, but the flawed, raw, damaged you. And for the first time, I'm no longer angry. I'm just sad that we couldn't find our way back before we lost everything. He reached forward and turned the camera off. The video ended. No music, no edits, just truth. Taehyung watched it alone in his studio, fingers shaking, tears blurring the screen. He knew then what no apology, no interview could fix. He had destroyed the bridge. And Jungkook had walked away not to hurt him, but to protect what was left of himself. But something unexpected happened. The fans didn't turn on either of them. They mourned. Collectively, they flooded Twitter with old photos, edits, messages of hope. Not desperation, but acceptance. The kind that says, we miss what was, but we respect what is. Hybe remained silent. For once, they knew better. And somewhere, in a coffee shop near the Han River, Jimin sat alone, scrolling through all of it, a small smile on his lips. Because healing doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like letting go loudly, beautifully, and with no regrets. The wind outside the Seoul Broadcasting Tower howled against the glass like a wild thing trying to claw its way in. Inside, everything was still. Clean lines, silent monitors, empty corridors that echoed every step. It was 2 a.m. Jungkook stood alone in Studio 3C, the same place where their last group performance had been recorded a year ago, back when laughter filled the space, and the silence between takes wasn't so violent. He stood at the edge of the stage and looked out at the empty rows of seats. They had once been full of crew, stylists, choreographers, friends. Now it was only memory and shadow. He could still see where Taehyung had tripped during a dance run-through and pretended it was part of the routine. He could hear Jimin's soft laugh from behind the curtain. He remembered how Taehyung had looked at him back then, not like an enemy, not even like a brother, but like someone who knew all his secrets and never wanted to use them. That version of Taehyung felt like a ghost now. But something had brought Jungkook here tonight. A pull he couldn't ignore. A question that had no words, but refused to stop asking. Why did it have to end like this? The door creaked open behind him. He didn't turn. He already knew the footsteps. Taehyung. No manager, no cameras, no PR. Just him, just now, just them. The door clicked shut. The tension in the air thickened. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. It was Taehyung who broke the silence first, his voice rough, almost inaudible. I thought maybe you wouldn't show. I didn't come for you, Jungkook said without looking back. I came to remember what didn't feel like war. Taehyung moved a little closer. The creak of the wooden floor beneath his boots was almost unnerving in its normalcy. I saw your video, he said, voice steadier now. Every word hit like a blade. It wasn't meant to cut you, Jungkook replied, finally turning. It was meant to cut me open. I needed to bleed, publicly, honestly, without pretending to be the hero. Taehyung's jaw clenched. Then let me bleed too. Jungkook stared at him. You've already bled all over the truth. The damage is done. I know. Taehyung stepped onto the stage now, only feet between them. I don't want this to be the last time we stand on the same floor without a camera telling us how to feel. Then feel it, Jungkook said. Say what you need to say, Taehyung. But don't wrap it in poetry. Don't cry on cue. Don't try to manipulate your way back into grace. Taehyung didn't flinch. You think that's what I'm doing? I think you forgot how to be real. Taehyung exhaled sharply. Maybe I did, but I never forgot you. Then how could you say that about my mother? Because I hated how much she loved you. Silence. Raw. Undeniable. Devastating. I hated how she looked at you like you were the only thing good in this world. Like the rest of us were just orbiting your sun. Taehyung continued, eyes burning now. I hated that no matter what I did, no matter how much I gave, I still felt like a background character in your story. And that night when I said those words, I wasn't insulting her. I was trying to destroy you. Jungkook looked like he'd been hit. Taehyung didn't stop. I wanted to see you fall. Just once. I wanted to see what it felt like to win. And did you? Jungkook asked, voice trembling. Did it feel like winning? Taehyung shook his head slowly. No. It felt like dying. Jungkook stepped back. You know, he whispered, I would have given you everything. I would have burned every bridge for you, Taehyung. All you had to do was ask. But instead, you chose to become the fire. Tears filled Taehyung's eyes. I didn't know how to be loved. Not by you. Not by her. I was afraid it was all conditional. And now? Jungkook asked. Now I know it wasn't. But it's too late. Jungkook nodded. Yes, it is. The weight of those words was unbearable. Taehyung looked down, struggling to breathe. I thought you might say that. Jungkook's voice softened, but his eyes stayed cold. I didn't come here to fix things. I came here to bury them. Then say goodbye, Taehyung whispered. Jungkook looked him dead in the eyes. Goodbye, Taehyung. And he turned to leave. But before he could step off the stage, Taehyung said something that made him stop dead. She called me. Jungkook froze. She called me, Taehyung repeated. Your mom, 2 days ago, she asked if I was okay. Said she forgave me. That she understood now that I wasn't attacking her. I was screaming for help. Jungkook's throat tightened. You're lying. I swear to God I'm not. Jungkook turned back around, disbelief etched in every inch of his face. She what? She said she could hate what I did but still believe in who I was before the bitterness. She said she saw me like a son once, and she still wanted to believe I wasn't gone forever. Jungkook's hands were shaking. She said that to you? He asked. She said that for you. Jungkook's body trembled. Everything inside him rage, sorrow, hope clashed, like thunder. And then, against every instinct, he laughed. Not with joy, with disbelief. She's always been too good for this world, he muttered. Taehyung took a tentative step forward. Maybe we can still find a way. No, Jungkook interrupted. You don't get to maybe your way out of this. You don't get to plant hope like a trap. I'm not trying to trap you, Taehyung said, voice breaking. I'm trying to be worthy of being in your life again. You're not, Jungkook replied, sharp as a blade. And I'm done waiting for you to be. Taehyung's shoulders sagged. But I'll say this, Jungkook added. You finally told the truth. That counts for something. Taehyung didn't speak. He just nodded. One slow, hollow motion. And Jungkook walked past him, the sound of his steps echoing long after he disappeared down the hallway. Taehyung was alone again, but this time he didn't feel abandoned. He felt exposed. Not broken, just seen. The first time in years. Back at home, Jungkook sat on his rooftop, staring out over the city lights. He didn't cry, but he didn't smile either. He just breathed. For the first time in weeks, he didn't feel like he was suffocating. His phone buzzed. It was his mother. A single message. Sometimes, letting go is the most honest love of all. He looked up at the sky, and for the first time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt clean, like rain had finally washed the blood off the truth. The morning came like a lie. Sunlight poured over Seoul as if nothing had happened, as if the sky had not broken open inside Studio 3C just hours before. But somewhere in the city's beating heart, reality simmered beneath the perfect facade. Jungkook stood at the threshold of the Hybe rooftop garden, a space designed for serenity but now pulsing with tension. He hadn't been here in months, not since before everything collapsed. The air was sharper here, cleaner, but it felt wrong. Too quiet, too peaceful for a man whose soul still vibrated with unresolved war. He wasn't alone. Standing in the middle of the garden was Bang Siyuk, arms crossed, expression unreadable. A few executives loitered near the exit behind them, pretending to check their phones, but their ears were wide open. This wasn't a private conversation. It was an ambush in a velvet box. Jungkook walked in anyway. Thanks for finally making time, Bang said without preamble. I didn't come for pleasantries, Jungkook replied. Bang exhaled. Then let's stop dancing. You've made a spectacle out of this feud with Taehyung. The public's turning it into mythology. That's a problem. Only for people who care more about the brand than the truth. You are the brand. No, Jungkook said sharply. I'm not your product anymore. Bang's jaw tensed. You think this is about control. It's not. It's about responsibility. You took something private and lit it on fire. Do you have any idea how much money we've lost in brand partnerships? Endorsements pulling out? Contracts frozen? Jungkook's eyes flashed. And you think I care? My mother's name was dragged through filth, and your first concern is endorsement deals? You're not the only one hurt, Jungkook. There's a whole ecosystem behind you. Trainees who look up to you, staff who depend on you. You blew a hole in the mythos we built around you. That myth was never real. You built an altar around silence. I just refuse to kneel anymore. Bang stepped forward, lowering his voice. Do you want to be a martyr? Or do you want to build something bigger than this drama? Jungkook didn't flinch. I want the truth to be louder than the choreography. Bang's tone darkened. Then make your truth profitable. Write a song, appear on a talk show, cry on cue if you have to, but stop bleeding in front of cameras unless it earns us something. The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It screamed. Jungkook took a step back, disgust barely contained in his voice. You just admitted everything wrong with this industry. Don't act surprised, Bang said, eyes narrowing. You benefited from it for a decade. Not anymore, Jungkook said. I'm done. Don't be a fool. You think walking away fixes anything? No, Jungkook whispered. But staying breaks me. He turned to leave. You're under contract. Jungkook stopped, just short of the exit. Then sue me, he said, not even turning back. I'd rather be dragged through court than pretend for one more second. And with that, he left them standing in the garden full of flowers that now smelled like rot. Later that day, Taehyung sat in a hidden cafe in Mappo, his hoodie pulled low over his face, sunglasses hiding the swelling in his eyes. He stirred his Americano with a straw he didn't want. The cafe was empty except for one person, Jimin. He sat across from him, arms folded, silence heavy. I guess this is the part where you yell at me? Taehyung mumbled. Jimin shook his head. No, I already did that in my head 100 times. This is the part where I listen to whatever excuse you still have. Taehyung sighed, defeated. I don't have one. Jimin leaned forward. Then why am I here? Taehyung's hands trembled as he reached into his bag and pulled out a notebook. Worn edges. Covered in doodles. Jimin recognized it. That's the one we used for lyrics, Taehyung finished. Back when we weren't scared of honesty. He opened to a page. It wasn't lyrics. It was a letter. To Jungkook. Read it, Taehyung said. Jimin hesitated, then took the book. The letter was unpolished. Raw. Full of crossed-out lines. But every word bled guilt. I wanted to be seen, but I didn't realize I already was. By you. By him. And I took that light and turned it into shadow. You loved me anyway, until I made it impossible. Jimin closed the book slowly. You think this fixes anything? Taehyung shook his head. I don't want to fix anything. I want to stop pretending it can be. Jimin's expression softened just slightly. You're really done with pretending? Yes. A moment passed before Jimin spoke again. Then maybe this time, write a song that doesn't ask for forgiveness. Write one that finally tells the truth. Taehyung smiled bitterly. What if the truth ruins everything? Jimin stood up and grabbed his coat. Then it ruins everything. But at least it'll be real. Meanwhile, Jungkook was in his childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling as rain returned to Seoul like a warning. He remembered being 13, humming melodies in this very room. Back then, the dream was pure, honest, loud, not commodified, not politicized. He sat up and opened his notebook. Not a single brand demanded it. No fans expected it. No producers hovered. But the words came anyway. He wrote about betrayal, not as a weapon, but as a wound. He wrote about brothers, not as idols, but as boys who dreamed in the dark. He wrote about silence and how dangerous it had become. By the time the sun rose, the song was done. It had no title, just two initials. J.T. He recorded it in a makeshift home studio. One mic, no auto-tune, one take. His voice cracked in places. He left them in. The guitar strings buzzed. He didn't fix them. The background had a faint hum of wind. He layered it, intentionally. The song dropped unannounced. No teaser, no promo, just a black and white image of a broken mic on the cover. Fans found it within minutes. And when they listened, they didn't breathe. The first line was whispered. You stood beside me like a shadow that forgot it was cast by light. The chorus tore into the air. We were never just seven. We were wounds stitched in harmony. And the last line, barely a breath. I loved you enough to walk away. The internet didn't explode. It wept. For hours, fans wrote threads, essays, reactions. Some called it a eulogy. Others called it freedom. But one thing was undeniable. It was not for applause. It was a confession. One the world had waited for without knowing it. HYBE released a terse statement. Jungkook's creative choices are his own. We will support his artistic direction within reason. But no one cared about the statement. They only cared about the truth. And for the first time, it wasn't filtered through a brand. It was just a boy with a broken heart and a guitar. Taehyung heard the song alone. He didn't cry at first. He just sat there, stunned. By the time the second chorus played, his hands were shaking too much to hold the phone. By the time it ended, he was on the floor, sobbing. Because the one thing he never expected had finally happened. Jungkook had let go, not out of hatred, but out of love. And that was harder to survive than any silence ever could be. The candlelight flickered in the room, casting long, trembling shadows across the floor of Jungkook's apartment. It was quiet, painfully so. The kind of silence that makes your own heartbeat feel loud. Jungkook sat on the rug, legs folded beneath him, eyes half closed as he let the final note of the track he had just recorded disappear into the air. It wasn't just a song anymore. It was a release. A funeral for what they used to be. He should have felt lighter, but he didn't. Some truths don't set you free. They just remind you of the weight you've been carrying for years. He exhaled slowly and reached for his phone. It had been off for 2 days since the track dropped, since the internet caught fire. He knew if he turned it on, there would be chaos. Reactions. Questions. Theories. He wasn't ready. But part of him wanted to know what Taehyung had done, what he had said. If he had listened, before he could change his mind, he turned the phone on. It buzzed for a full minute straight. Hundreds of unread messages, missed calls, mentions, fan videos, reaction clips. He ignored them all until he saw it. A voice note from Taehyung. It had been sent hours after the song dropped. Jungkook stared at it, thumb hovering. Then he tapped play. Taehyung's voice came through, quiet, shaken. I listened to it, every second, and I can't breathe. I'm not going to lie and say I didn't expect it. I did. I just didn't expect it to hurt this much. There was a pause. I didn't know the last time you'd sing to me would be like this. Another pause. Longer. I deserved every word. Silence. I thought about responding with a song too, but it would be fake, because I'd be trying to match your pain instead of owning mine. A shaky inhale. I lied to you, Jungkook. That made Jungkook sit up straighter. Taehyung's voice dropped lower. That night, when I said your mom was manipulative, it wasn't the first time I said something like that. I told someone else, months before. A stylist. I was venting. I thought I was safe, but I knew they had ties to the media. I didn't care. I wanted it to leak. I wanted to hurt you quietly before the storm hit. Jungkook's jaw clenched. Taehyung continued, but the leak never came, and I convinced myself you'd never know, that I'd gotten away with it, until the mic caught me later. I deserved to be exposed. The voice broke. I'm telling you this because you need the full truth to walk away. Not the edited version I showed the world. Not the rehearsed tears, but the truth that I was cruel. On purpose. And you still treated me with more grace than I deserved. The message ended. Jungkook didn't replay it. He didn't need to. The words had seared themselves into his memory. He stood up abruptly, knocking over the empty glass beside him. It shattered. He didn't flinch. He walked into the bathroom and splashed water on his face. His reflection stared back pale, tired, older than his age. His phone buzzed again. Another voice note. From Jimin. Jungkook played it instantly. Hey, I know you've probably heard Taehyung's message by now. I just wanted to say I'm proud of you. Not because you forgave him, not because you didn't, but because you finally said something. That song, it was the bravest thing I've ever heard from you. There was a pause. I also wanted to tell you something you don't know. More silence. Back when all this was happening, Taehyung came to me and begged me to talk to your mom, to explain his side, to soften things. I refused. Jungkook froze. I told him no, because I knew she didn't need his words. She needed yours. And when you stood on that stage and defended her, I knew I was right. Another pause. I love you, Jungkook. Not as an idol, as a brother. And whatever happens next, just know, you never stood alone. The message ended. Jungkook sat down slowly on the bathroom floor, knees pulled to his chest. It had been years since he cried without hiding. Tonight, he didn't hide. And the tears came fast, quiet, relentless. Meanwhile, across the city, Taehyung stood in his studio, surrounded by half-finished canvases and open notebooks. He had tried writing something in response, but everything sounded like a performance. So he did nothing, until a knock came at the door. He opened it, and Jimin walked in. No words, just a nod. They sat down together in silence. Minutes passed. Then Taehyung whispered, "Did he reply?" "No," Jimin said gently. "He doesn't have to." Taehyung nodded, accepting that. "I think I ruined something sacred." "You did," Jimin said. Taehyung looked up, startled. But Jimin wasn't finished. "You ruined something sacred." But Jungkook did something even harder. He preserved it, by leaving it behind. That hit like a blow. Taehyung closed his eyes. "I miss him." "I know," Jimin said. "We all do. But he's not yours to miss anymore." Taehyung stood up slowly. He walked to the window and looked out at the city. Its lights were beautiful, but they were also distant, like stars you could never quite touch. The next morning, the headlines changed. Jungkook's song breaks streaming records, but fans divided over Taehyung's silence. He been under fire after alleged internal audio leaks show corporate pressure. A clip had surfaced, one of Bang Si-hyuk yelling at staff to control the narrative before Jungkook's live appearance. Fans were furious. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about two boys fighting. It was about power, control, silencing truth in favor of image. And the world had had enough. A group of fans started trending, "Let them speak." Jungkook didn't post. Taehyung didn't respond. But the silence said everything. In a small studio in Busan, Jungkook sat with an old producer from his trainee days. They weren't making an album. They were making space. Space for what came next. Jungkook closed his eyes and sang again. Not about Taehyung, not about betrayal, but about memory. About growing up in a machine that didn't teach him how to feel, only how to perform. He would not perform anymore. He would live. And somewhere in Seoul, Taehyung began painting again. Alone. With no cameras. No staff. The first brushstroke was shaky, but honest, exactly like his apology had never been. It began with a whisper. A single sentence, barely audible, buried deep in the raw footage of a behind-the-scenes video uploaded by a third-party editor who didn't work for HYBE. The video had been sitting unnoticed for almost 16 hours on a forgotten YouTube channel dedicated to fan-made documentary content. A typical upload, nothing flashy. Just 37 minutes of grainy backstage footage from a rehearsal 2 months before the scandal broke. The thumbnail was dull. The title generic. Until someone in the comments noticed something. At the 25:42 mark, the audio was still rolling even though the frame had gone black for a second. And Jungkook's voice was heard. If he ever says one more word about my mother, I will bury this whole thinking company. Within the hour, the video had over 2 million views. Within 2 more, it had been scrubbed. But not before fans downloaded it, clipped it, subtitled it, and spread it across every platform imaginable. By nightfall, it was the top trending topic worldwide. Jungkook hadn't known he'd been recorded. No one had. Not even the editor. The audio had been captured through a boom mic, accidentally left live after filming wrapped. And now the whole world had heard it. The press called it the bomb that blew the mask off K-pop. HYBE scrambled to issue a statement. They claimed the audio was taken out of context. That Jungkook's emotional reaction was due to creative disagreements, not personal matters. But no one believed it. Because when Jungkook said those words, his voice was shaking, his breath was shallow, and he wasn't acting. The world heard a man no longer willing to be silent. At the same time, Jungkook was in Busan, working in a dimly lit studio when he got the call from Jimin. "Have you seen what's going on?" "No," Jungkook said, distracted, strumming an acoustic guitar. "I've been offline all day." Jimin's voice was heavy. "You're everywhere. That old rehearsal video leaked. The one where you snapped. It's real. People heard everything." Jungkook stopped playing. Everything froze. He set the guitar down, slowly, carefully. Did they hear all of it? They heard enough. Jungkook exhaled through his nose, jaw tight. Jimin hesitated before speaking again. "I know you didn't mean for it to be public, but Kook, they're standing with you." Jungkook didn't reply. Not for a long time. Finally, he said, "I meant every word." "I know," Jimin said softly. "We all knew. Now the world does too." Across Seoul, Taehyung was in a private cafe when he saw the headline flash on the TV screen above the barista's head. He turned slowly, as if confirming a nightmare, and read the caption, "Jungkook, I'll bury this whole company. Leaked audio shakes HYBE's foundation." He blinked, then blinked again. The coffee in his hand suddenly felt too hot. He set it down, palms sweating. A girl sitting 2 tables away was holding her phone sideways, recording him without shame. He didn't stop her. What was the point? His heart thundered in his chest. Because he remembered that day. He remembered what happened before Jungkook said those words. They had just wrapped a choreography rehearsal. Everyone was exhausted. Jungkook had been quiet the entire session, simmering. Taehyung had walked past him and muttered, "At least your mother isn't trying to rewrite your image like she owns you." He hadn't meant for Jungkook to hear it, but he did. And 10 seconds later, Jungkook's voice broke the air with fury. Now, the world knew. Now the masks were gone. He pulled his hoodie up, left money on the table, and walked out. Not even the paparazzi followed him. Back in Busan, Jungkook opened his Instagram for the first time in weeks. 15 million new notifications. He ignored them all. Instead, he clicked New Post. He uploaded a photo. No caption. Just an old picture from years ago. Him and Taehyung backstage at a concert. Both of them grinning. Arms slung over each other's shoulders, like nothing could touch them. Then he opened his story and posted 3 words. "You weren't supposed to hear it, but I'm glad you did." The internet shattered. Fans flooded the comment sections. Some wept. Others fought. Some begged for reconciliation. Others applauded his bravery. Meanwhile, inside HYBE, panic was visible. Internal meetings were being held hourly. Legal teams circled every sentence Jungkook had said in the leaked audio. Some board members wanted him suspended. Some wanted him gone, but none of them could touch him, because the world had already decided whose side they were on. Later that night, Jungkook walked down the narrow alley of a familiar neighborhood. The streetlights buzzed above him. The bakery at the corner was closed, but the smell of old croissants lingered. He stopped in front of a door, a small, nondescript apartment above a music bar. Jimin opened it before he even knocked. "I knew you'd come." Jungkook stepped inside. No words. They sat across from each other. Jimin poured him a glass of water. The silence stretched. Then Jungkook finally said, "I thought I'd feel regret." Jimin looked at him calm. "Do you?" Jungkook shook his head. "I feel clean." Jimin smiled softly. "I don't care what HYBE says," Jungkook added. "I won't be a puppet again. If that means I disappear, so be it." "They won't bury you," Jimin said. "You've already become something they can't own anymore." Jungkook looked up. "And Taehyung?" Jimin exhaled. "He's not hiding, but he's not ready either. I don't need him to be." Jimin nodded. "But I'm going to finish what I started." Jimin leaned back. "What does that mean?" Jungkook's eyes were sharp now. "I'm going to tell everything. The real story. The industry. The silence. The broken contracts. The manipulation. Everything they covered up." Jimin's eyes widened slightly. "Are you sure you're ready for that storm?" Jungkook smiled. "I am the storm." The next morning, fans woke to another shock. Jungkook announced an independent documentary. No producers, no studio, no branding. Just him, titled Unspoken. Set to release in 4 weeks. Taehyung saw the announcement while sitting in his home studio, sketching. He stared at the poster for a long time, then opened his email and typed, "To Jeon Jungkook. Subject, for whatever it's worth. Body. If you ever want to film the other side of the story, I'm here. Not for the cameras. For you." He didn't hit send. Not yet. But for the first time, he wanted to. The camera clicked on. No intro. No music. No cuts. Just the soft hum of a ceiling fan above. And Jungkook seated on a simple wooden stool in front of a faded gray curtain in what looked like someone's living room. There was no glamour, no dramatic lighting, no producer voiceover. The image was a little too raw, the lighting a little too uneven. It was real, painfully, intentionally real.